What's up everybody, Frank from 5 AM Ramen here, and today we're diving into Fukuoka Ramen. We're in Fukuoka City, which is the largest city in Fukuoka Prefecture here on the island of Kyushu. And I can tell you this is Tonkotsu Ramen country. This place is all about tonkotsu or pork bone ramen. And today I'm highlighting just that. The best of Fukuoka ramen, pork bone ramen. We've got everything from historical bowls with food cart roots to some of the top-ranked, more modern bowls in the city. Let's do this. Fukuoka Ramen starting now. For those of you here for the first time, 5 AM Ramen is your direct portal to Japan's ramen world. I'm Frank, a Tokyo native, and your ramen host. I'm happy to claim that I eat ramen for a living. Again, today I'm in Fukuoka City, Fukuoka Prefecture on the island of Kyushu. In Kyushu, pork bone or tonkotsu ramen reigns supreme. Everyone here eats it like it's their job. And it's my job today to bring you the best tonkotsu ramen from Fukuoka City. And note that this video is one of several upcoming videos from Fukuoka. Stay tuned for those. Anyways, let's get to it. Back to me on the ground. I'm hungry. I'm now making my way over to ramen shop number 1 for the day, Hakata-style. Well, they're a historical ramen shop here in Fukuoka, and they've been around since 1952. So I think it's appropriate that we start with a more historical bowl. We need to understand better the roots of pork bone ramen. It was a little bit different back in the day. Find out more about that in a little bit. Hakata-style is definitely a ramen shop where you can feel the history. This history is almost seeping out of the walls. At these old school ramen shops like Hakata-style, the menu is often on the wall, and I'm ordering their standard go-to ramen. After devouring this affordable historical bowl, here's my recap. Okay, so just finished my bowl at Hakata-style, and it was a lot of fun. You definitely get that historical vibe in the ramen shop. The fact that on the counter there were also eggs that you can basically pay for and add to your ramen. This is something you don't see in a lot of ramen shops, but they used to do that back in the day. And given the history of this place since 1952, of course, you would see that there. Very, very old school interior, makes you feel really at home, brings you back to an earlier time here in Fukuoka. The ramen itself also had a simplicity to it, simple but delicious. It was very smooth and syrupy with that soy sauce seasoning in the background. And the noodles are thin, but also quite flat, not round as you would normally see, or even square. These were flatter. And of course, nice bite to them. Very happy that this was the first place I chose for my first bowl of Fukuoka ramen, Hakata-style. Here's another famous Fukuoka ramen shop you have to check out if you visit, Hakata-style. They're famous for their frothy, cappuccino-like tonkotsu ramen. Now this is a porky soup. You'll smell the pork bone funk right when you walk in, even if you have a mask on. It's so porky because they apparently use 2 to 3 times more pork bones than other ramen shops. And I can tell you, to begin with, tonkotsu ramen, they're already using a ton of pork bones. This is a heavy bowl, but it's of course oh so delicious. And Hakata-style is actually the only ramen shop I'll be introducing today that has a ticket machine to order from, not a menu. Okay, back to me. All right, I'm visiting a ramen shop that is literally right next door to Hakata-style. It's called Komaya. And from my understanding, they're also taking an old school approach to their tonkotsu ramen, even though they're a relatively new shop, haven't been around that long. Now, compared to the milky style of tonkotsu ramen that is commonplace nowadays, this place, and also maybe Hakata-style as an extension, are focusing more on an older school style of tonkotsu ramen. This is back in the day when they didn't have burners on the stove there that could be really cranked up in terms of high heat. So this is more of a low heat, a long simmer of pork bones. And I have arrived at Komaya. Locals love this spot, and you could consider it a hidden ramen gem. I ordered their standard ramen, but with a spicy side dish to add to the soup. After the ramen at Komaya, here's me taking a break in a nearby parking lot. I'm clearly in the middle of a serious tonkotsu ramen coma. So I just finished my bowl at Komaya. I would say in terms of pork flavor, about the same, but whereas the first one was maybe a little bit more milky, this one was less milky and a little bit thicker, and also, yeah, definitely more oily. Now this one also had a little bit of that soy sauce seasoning in the background, and that created a golden brownish sort of colored soup.
Now, to get this consistency again, what he basically does is boil the pork bones on low heat for a long period of time, not high heat. He doesn't lift the lid of the pot either. Everything gets really acquainted and it's got a very pure sort of pork flavor, let's say. Delicious bowl, and I think to change things up, what I ordered was their Gekikara Takana, which is basically really spicy mustard leaves. That was a nice jolt in the broth, also breaking up some of that richness. It was advertised as super spicy, but I wouldn't say it was that insanely spicy. Great bowl right around the corner from Hakuryuken. For the next bowl, I'm actually going to be hopping on the bus not too far from here, and I'm going to a ramen restaurant called Hakata Genki Ippai. This is probably the most famous ramen shop in all of Fukuoka City. This is a must visit for anyone that is visiting Fukuoka and wants ramen. And what we can expect is a little bit, let's say, less in-your-face, old-school approach to pork bone ramen. Really excited to share that with everyone. Let's go.
With my noodle-filled belly shaking to the beat of the bus, I bounced along to Hakata Genki Ippai. Now, when you see this little blue bucket outside, you'll know you're at the right place. There are actually no signs outside at Hakata Genki Ippai. And you know the drill. I'm getting their signature ramen, verbally letting the staff know what my choice is. Just say ramen in Fukuoka and you can't go wrong when you want to order. And here she is. Look at how white that soup is. It's like I'm in heaven with a choir to greet me as well. Here are my thoughts on this angelic colored bowl after finishing it.
Okay, so Hakata Genki Ippai at the very top of many people's Fukuoka ramen lists. Now, what's different about this bowl from the previous two is that there's practically no smell when you walk into the ramen shop. You might not even know that you're eating pork bone ramen. It's very milky. I would say the closest thing to drinking milk as there can be in a ramen form. So whereas the two places were much porkier, more in your face with that pork, let's say, prominence, this place definitely not the case. It was again like drinking milk. Now the soup is mostly pork's head that they're using, but they must strain it a lot or something, or use a lot of vegetables maybe to offset it, because the pork's head is normally, or I should say pig's head, is normally very gamey, very intensely flavored. This was very gentle. For tonkotsu ramen in Fukuoka, the noodles have relatively quite a bit of water in them. But of course, wonderful quality noodles. And to break up a little bit of that milkiness, I added on the table there what they have is togarashi spice. But it's funny that togarashi spice was in there, but still being drowned out by that milk. Excellent bowl. I am not tonkotsu ramened out yet. And next on the list, I'm gonna hit up Hakata Ramen Shinshin Tenjin Honten. Shinshin for short. This is also at the very top of many people's tonkotsu ramen lists. Now this is a sweeter broth, and they're also adding chicken bones into the broth. So it's gonna be a little bit different from the tonkotsu ramen we've sampled up to now.
At Shinshin, I ordered from their menu the most popular ramen choice, adding an egg as well. As you can see, they have a big menu, not just ramen too. I'll talk more about this later. After finishing up my bowl, here's me outside of Shinshin, significantly heavier than when I started the day.
So I just finished my bowl at Shinshin, and the bowl was, first of all, definitely bigger here. I think this is closer to what I'm used to in Tokyo, definitely bigger in size, so I was like, okay, gotta push through, but was able to finish it. Also because I tossed in an egg, there was a little bit more to finish there. The noodles were even thinner than the other places, if that's possible. Ultra thin noodles, but quite a bit of them. As to the soup, this was gentle, but in a much more delicate way. It had a softer flavor, not as much of that pork, milky or otherwise, and because I think of the chicken that they blend into the broth, it also just wasn't pork that you were tasting. That created maybe a more, for lack of a better word, maybe a more balanced kind of broth. Relatively light and also a thin broth compared to the other bowls today. And there's nobody around, even though I haven't shaved in a long time. I think I'll just finish here with without the mask here. On top of that, this place is actually more of a drinking spot as well. You can definitely tell on the inside when you walk in. It's open until 3 a.m. And they also have a lot of items on the menu, not just ramen. They've got gyoza or fried dumplings, for example. So they definitely get the late night crowd as well. You do get a sense that they're more commercialized on the inside too, but what that means is a little bit more English-friendly menus. I'm sure some of the staff speak English, so it might be easier to set up your order here. Great bowl, and I'm glad I ended perhaps here with a lighter one. I think think I'm gonna call it a day for ramen eating. I've got some other food to eat this evening, non-ramen, but I'm gonna get right back to it tomorrow. And yeah, feel free to have a watch of the other videos on this channel. I'm in Fukuoka for a few days, so besides this one, I'm gonna be putting out some other Fukuoka ramen videos. Let me know in the comments, which was your favorite bowl of all the ones I introduced today? Did one stand out more than the others? Do let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. This is Frank from 5am Ramen reminding you that Japan is the only country in the world where you can have amazing ramen at 5 a.m. This includes the great city of Fukuoka. Thanks for tuning in.